Hello and welcome to the Place to Place podcast. I'm Claire Dewhurst, the Director of City Nation Place, which is the forum for place brands and place marketing. The idea behind this podcast series is to create a chain of conversations between place branding leaders to give you the opportunity to listen in to honest conversations about their challenges, the solutions they're finding, and the opportunities they're exploring to ensure that their place brand strategies deliver real economic benefits. We're really thrilled that you've chosen to tune in, and I hope you enjoy the discussions. So welcome back to this next episode, and welcome back Claire Prentice from Brand Scotland. Lovely to have you here with us again, Claire. And Claire has asked us to connect her with Marius Gurskas, who is from the Government Chancellery of Lithuania. That's a new organisational name on me, so I hope I said it properly. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation between two nations. So over to you, Claire.
Thank you so much, Claire, and thanks to Claire and Katie for inviting me back for another podcast. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to be talking to Marius this afternoon. So hello, Marius. It's good to see you. What I was hoping we'd talk about today, at Brand Scotland, as I'm sure in many nations, I think we absolutely recognise that promoting our country and our brand internationally is really, really important. But for that to be effective, it's really important that, you have that belief and that advocacy at home. So I'm hoping that some of what we can talk about today, because I know that that sort of similar ethos is just as important to Brand Lithuania. So welcome, Marius. Hello.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Great. So I've got a few questions to kick us off, but I know that Brand Lithuania do lots of great work, and part of that was recognised at the City Nation Place Awards a couple of years ago, where Brand Lithuania won the Best Citizen Engagement Award with your Lithuania's DNA project. And I think the reason I was particularly interested in that piece of work is I think it taps into exactly what I just mentioned around how, as nation brands and countries, we can tap into that insight and that advocacy of our domestic citizens and really using that to inform our nation brand strategies and communications approaches. And I suppose doing that in a way that's authentic and credible. And I think that piece of work certainly spoke to a lot of that. So it'd be really brilliant to hear a little bit more about that piece of work.
Indeed, Claire, it is very, I would say the crucial part may be to engage with citizens in a country in building your brand. And, there is a saying, it takes two for tango. So it takes at least three to nation branding building. It means government, business, and civil society. And what we did actually from the very beginning, before starting, building up the strategy for country branding, we knew that there will be a crucial part to involve citizens. And that's why we, launched a special project, the Lithuania DNA project, as a citizen engagement project building country brand. So just, if we look back since 1996, Lithuania has made actually several attempts to build a national brand. And unfortunately, all of them were successful. Just one, the last one, was successful. And the reasons were different. It is disapproval or distrust by general population, disagreement between experts and a public regarding the core values and features of nations' brands, the lack of continuity of the process. And, having learned those lessons, we thought that before the launching, this country branding process, we have to consult with the public. And we actually launched this project. And this project consisted actually from different parts. One part was surveys, and the citizens had the ability, to express their view how Lithuania should be presented abroad. And we did actually a survey on our webpage, lithuania.lt, and we received more than 7,000 answers to short questions. Actually, what does it mean for just general people in Lithuania? How the country should be presented, what the values, the core values should be that we will, talk with foreign audiences. And that was quite a successful attempt to receive those answers. And another part was a public campaign. On board, we had actually national TV, radio, panel discussions. We had a lot of discussions also with key stakeholders. So, combining all those process, at the end, we came up with the idea that Lithuania should be presented abroad as a country open for co-creation, to co-create solutions to global problems. And that's the core value for our brand. It also was important, to discuss with the citizens about the core values which should be presented. And the core values, after long discussions, we have discovered that the core values is freedom to create, connection with the nature, development, and drive. So those are the main values which were presented by ordinary people. And later on, we put all those answers of our citizens and gave those answers actually to the experts who developed the strategy. So it was very useful input from general public to the experts. And that's how we created the strategy. So this is actually the crucial point, to involve citizens and to consult them how the country should be presented. And I think that this was a very successful way, and we are continuing to.
Absolutely, and it's brilliant to hear that, and obviously so much evidence and data gathered to inform that process, and then that leading through to a kind of positioning for your brand and values, and I suppose having that rooted in what your people in the country were telling you is just so powerful. And I suppose just building on that, so whilst you talked about open for co-creation and some of the core values that sit as part of that brand, one of the things I'm also interested in is how do you then take that a stage further? So obviously that sort of creative platform and those values can really shape how you talk about Lithuania internationally, but how do you also use that to continue to tap into domestic citizens and using them very much as advocates and influencers at home as well, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think that one of the best example talking about how people became real advocates of the brand is our support to Ukraine. I mean, many, I think, of the initiatives which started from the grassroots, and just several of them. One of them is Raiderum project, and it was like, the goal to collect money for radars. And the initial goal was to collect 5 million, but we ended with a 14 million. So it was done in 1 month, and it was initiated by grassroots movements, NGOs, and people joined and donated. And this is the clear example how our value, which is in a brand, the freedom, actually works in practice. Another one is, this drive, and the latest example, our traveler, Lithuanian traveler, Aurimas Valevičius, we just finished his 4 months journey crossing the Atlantic Ocean in a single rowing boat. That's, also good example how, individual Lithuanian demonstrates the value of drive and, I would say, even bravery. So we see those values in concrete people, citizen Lithuanians, and they are real ambassadors of our brands. And in practice, by doing, not only by talking, they actually presents what is behind the brand and the core value of the brand. So this is, I think, the best examples which demonstrates that the brand, which was built up together with citizens, experts, after long panel discussions, conferences, analyzing strategic documents, actually also analyzing what other countries are doing. And we came up also with this idea to co-create global solutions. And I think that this attitude is quite different from what other countries do, because usually countries want to show how they are good. I mean, faster, better, and so on. And this approach, especially after pandemic and these days when the war, Russia's war in Ukraine is going on, now we need more collaboration and co-creation, because there is no one country on the world which could solve by itself the huge problems. I mean, the biggest problems, for example, the same COVID or the war. So we need cooperation and co-creation. That's the only way. And that's what it is about Lithuanian brand.
I think it's such an important point, and I suppose it's reflective of some of the way we like to think in Scotland as well. We're also a relatively small country. And I think you're absolutely right about this kind of, we're the biggest and the best way of communicating is long gone. And certainly that bit of collaboration is much more important, particularly for smaller nations where we can come together. And what you're talking around the way you've developed your nation brand and that kind of virtuous circle of the story coming from the citizens and then the citizens being the ones that become the advocates for the brand is just absolutely, I think, is spot on. So thank you for sharing that. I'm also interested in, you called it, I think earlier you said it takes three to tango. And
Two to
you
tango,
mentioned,
but three to nation branding. Yeah.
yeah, well, I think sometimes, I mean, you're probably the same as us. Sometimes it feels like there's a lot more people tangoing than you might necessarily want. So you'd mentioned government, business, and citizens. And I suppose I'm thinking more around, kind of other big partners and stakeholders, because I'm sure in Lithuania you probably work in a similar way to Brand Scotland, and that we work with, tourism, business, education, the creative industries, etc. And it's not an easy process. So I'm just really interested to understand how that works in Brand Lithuania and what the structure is, and just how you've managed some of those relationships and really, I guess, getting the value out of that everyone's working together and getting the benefit from that. It'd be great to hear about
hmm
that.
Indeed, is I would say the biggest challenge, to engage with stakeholders and to go with all of this process, to have those key stakeholders on board and coordinate all the process. So it's quite a challenge, and we have started to do this actually now 5 years ago, and we in 2 years we just finished the strategy. But afterwards, we have now actually quite also challenging journey to keep all those stakeholders on board, and we have a close cooperation and just exchanging opinions and working on different projects. But we have started with a strategy and having on board Invest Lithuania. But what we have now, Travel Lithuania also joined this mother brand. So now we have all key institutions or key stakeholders on board, and we present Lithuania, and our story or narrative is almost the same, different context and across different sectors. That was the first initial goal, just to have a constant story across different agencies or public sector institutions, not to tell different stories and to do what they have or want to do actually. So that was the challenge before we started our work, because we had almost 27, I think, institutions which were working on representing Lithuania abroad. And you can imagine 27 institutions with 27 different stories and 27 different toolkits and, visual information and so on. So it was quite a wicked chaos and just a lot of efforts to put in to present Lithuania, but what the result? So now we had managed to coordinate this, and we now have quite a good system. Actually, we have a 10-year strategy. We have an information monitoring system that we just set up, and the toolkit for all public sector agencies which are working and representing Lithuania abroad. So yeah, this was a quite challenging journey, but now we have all stakeholders on board, and I think that the system is functioning very well.
Thanks, Marius. And again, I suppose that's testament to the work that you've done around, a kind of really consistent strategy and brand. And I suppose half the battle when you're working with a lot of stakeholders is just making it easy for them to tell that story. And, again, that's absolutely what you're doing in Lithuania, and especially when you've got 27 or more different organizations. Does your work extend into working with other partners in the commercial sector and industry, other brands? Is that part of your work
Yeah.
too?
This is, of course, we're working with a business as well, but this is the next stage. We want more closer to work with them and engage with business, especially, and we have an expo ahead, 2025 in Osaka. So we want, to involve business and just to let them to tell the story. And we have quite good stories as well, how actually today business, which is recognizable around the world, is on board as well. So for example, Winted, they started their operations in Lithuania, and now they are working in more than 60 countries today. So Winted is very recognizable, for example, in France, and they help us also communicate our brand story and narratives about Lithuania. Another example is the world's leading mobility as a service technology company. They have also started their business in Vilnius and built connected mobility solutions that today help people, cities, and companies around the world. So that's real examples how companies help us to tell Lithuania's story.
It's so important, and I suppose it helps create those partnerships and those connections with organizations that share your values and vision, etc. So that's really interesting. Another thing, I suppose, that is notoriously difficult for all of us in this nation brand world is measuring effectiveness and the impact of our work. But I know, again, that Brand Lithuania have a number of different sort of data-led initiatives in place to help monitor, awareness and perceptions of Lithuania and your nation brand. So again, just really interested to hear about that. It's something that we'd love to do more of at Brand Scotland, but it's obviously very costly. So, always trying to find ways above and beyond the usual metrics in terms of how we can really measure the success of what we're doing. So really interested to hear about that, Marius.
Yeah, that's the question for $1 million or even more. And you might know that together with CNP, we are working on this measurement, and I do hope that in the mid of May we will have results and some kind of solutions, because it's not easy to measure the impact. And before we started our project, I would say that we were kind of naive, and we're thinking that, okay, in 2-3 years, we will start to measure the changes. But then we realized that this is not a sprint, this is a marathon. And it will take 5, 6, or even 10 years to see the real impact of what we are doing. Of course, you can measure your PR activities, marketing, and so on, digital platforms. You can see metrics and so on, but this is part of the story. And if you want to measure the real impact, you need changes in attitudes and perception of people, and it's quite a challenging job. But yeah, we do see that, especially with what we're doing with our help to Ukraine. And the latest, actually, Global Soft Power Index revealed that Lithuania is among top, I think, 3 countries which soft power increased the most. And the reason is exactly our foreign policy and the pillar of people values. And I've just contacted them who did the survey, and they said that the reason why we have those changes is our active position and EU and NATO platforms defending Ukraine and helping Ukraine. And that demonstrates, how the country can make the real impact of change on their brand, not by talking, but by doing. This is the real changes, and how you can measure whether there is some impact on your brand or not. So yes, it's a quite a long journey, but I think that we could measure in a short term our activities in a long term period as well.
Absolutely, and you're right. The work that you're talking about that City Nation Place are doing, I think, is going to be really instrumental in helping us all kind of navigate some of this. And that's brilliant to hear what you're talking about in the Global Soft Power Index. And it does demonstrate that, in the sort of marketing communications world, there's so much we can do, but actually the way that nations behave and the things that they do, can either really support that, but I guess it can also go the other way. So I suppose just what's next, is there a new initiative or something in the pipeline that's coming in the year ahead that you're excited for?
Regarding the country branding initiative,
Yeah,
or
yeah. Or are
yeah,
you
we
climbing a mountain? I don't know.
yeah, we always have quite new ideas how to do something better. But I'm very happy that we managed to have on board Travel Lithuania, because this sector is very visible abroad, and especially in our target countries. And that's why we wanted to have board Travel Lithuania to go, with the mother brand, not with some kind of different brand. And finally, after 5 years work, we succeeded. And actually, during the NATO summit and the media center, we will present Lithuania under one brand together with Travel Lithuania. So it will be the first time when we'll have Travel Lithuania joining us and representing Lithuania under one brand, under one story and visually and content. So it's really the last our achievement. But of course, we will not stop. We'll continue. And what I've mentioned also that in the near future, our goal is to engage more closely with the business, because business, as I mentioned, Vinted or Trafi or other, not only startups, but, Lithuanian business as well, working here, they actually are the real storytellers, because they produce customers in foreign countries. They, get to know the Lithuanian products, and products or services by our business can tell the story of Lithuania as well. So we want to engage more with business and then find ways how together more actively to tell the story about Lithuania.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, it sounds like you've got a pretty good model in place for doing that. Thanks so much, Marius. I think that's us out of time. I'll hand back to Claire.
Time is up, but thank you both so much. I do find it fascinating, having listened to you, how experienced place brand, nation brand leaders use that word brand for both things so easily. So a lot of your conversations about values and reputation and the brand being that thing that's out of your control. It's how people perceive you. And then you talk about, and it's good to hear that collaboration with tourism coming on board, finding this venue, and it's something you've been working hard for. Then the brand that you're promoting, and it's that duopoly, isn't it? That word brand means both things when we're talking about place branding and place marketing. I think it takes a lot for people to grasp that. But it's very interesting to hear that. And thank you very much for the plugs to the City Nation Place measurement study, which is, of course, I have to plug Bloom because they're actually doing all the work, just doing the coordinating. And we're looking forward to the webinar that's coming up where we're going to hear some of the first results. And thank you. And the other good thing is, so much of what you talked about, Marius, is these issues that come up time and time again, that private sector collaboration, that unified narrative, and they're all issues that we'll doubtless be looking at in the global agenda in November. But thank you, Claire, for asking such great questions. Thank you, Marius, for sharing your story. Look forward to welcoming you back to the next episode. We're working on that next connection. And thank you to everybody who has been listening today. Tune in to our next episode. There are plenty more on the website for you to catch up with as well. So thanks, everybody. Goodbye.